The County Seat is brought to you this week by Jones and DeMille Engineering, helping to shape your quality of life. Find out more at jonesanddemille.com.
Welcome to the County Seat. I'm Shawn, Milne, Tooele County Commissioner, filling in for Chad Booth. On today's program, we're going to talk about the Indigent Defense Commission, what it is, and why it matters to you. To give us a primer of the basics, I turn the time over to Derek Dowsett.
Everyone has the right to an attorney, but how that is managed might not be top of mind. Well, unless you're the one being arrested. The Sixth Amendment protects our right to a fair trial. In cases where an individual can't afford an attorney, the Constitution guarantees the right to all individuals to have representation of counsel at every proceeding in a criminal case. In cases where a defendant can't afford counsel, indigent defense provides that service. A person qualifies for indigent defense when they fall below 150% of the federal poverty line, or about $19,000 per year, is a minor, or in cases involving parental rights. Typically, 80 to 90% of individuals who find themselves arrested qualify for a public defender.
And this is important because in the American criminal justice system, we believe that a person is innocent until they're proven guilty. And a person should be proven guilty. A public defender ensures that the Constitution is upheld, that the state meets their heavy burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that an individual committed a crime prior to them being placed in custody. The public defender also provides important arguments at sentencing. When an individual is found guilty, the public defender will seek to bring humanity back into the courtroom, to bring mitigating circumstances of this individual to show that maybe a lower prison sentence would be appropriate with treatment or probation or supervision afterwards. The public defenders handle about 150 active cases at any given time. Our public defenders average about that. They have many open cases right now that they work through and provide representation on. It's an area where we, like any other area in America, could use more public defenders. I think that's consistent throughout the entire nation. Public defenders are needed. It's a work that is very overwhelming, oftentimes underpaid and overworked individuals.
The Indigent Defense Commission was created in 2016 to help level the playing field for counties to provide resources for public defenders to better represent their clients. Prior to that, the state didn't provide any funding for indigent defense or oversight, leaving that obligation to the counties. The result? 29 indigent defense programs that were operating at different capacities. Now, the IDC is a resource for counties to obtain state funding for grants, opportunities to share resources, and a means to measure caseloads and other statistics on a statewide level to make the whole system more equitable.
So the IDC gets their funding basically from the counties in the state. Each county pays into the Indigent Defense Commission Fund. We look at that as basically an insurance policy. If we had to fund criminal defense out of our county budget, it would be an astronomical sum. I think it's important that we have the IDC. I mean, they really fill a role of being able to coordinate the funds with the counties as well as help fund indigent defense. We really get a good bang for our buck as far as the money that we pay into the Indigent Defense Fund and allows people who are charged with a crime to have an adequate defense.
And those are the fundamentals of the IDC. For the County Seat, I'm Derek Dowsett.
Thanks, Derek. After the break, we'll introduce our guests and dive into the topic a little bit deeper. Well, welcome back. Today's program is about the Indigent Defense Commission, and our guests today are Lorene Kamalu, Davis County Commission, Todd Weiler, State Senator of District 23 in Davis County, and Joanna Landau, the Director of the Indigent Defense Commission. This Indigent Defense Commission, why did the IDC come about, Todd, Senator Weiler?
Well, the Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution guarantees a right to counsel. And, we use this big term, indigent defense. What we're talking about is public defenders. We're talking about state-paid public defenders to make sure that if your idiot brother-in-law or cousin gets arrested, that he has an attorney who has the time and the competence to make sure that he has a defense to the case. And unfortunately, in some parts of Utah, we haven't always had the best coverage. In fact, when I got involved in this issue in 2014, actually, I learned that most public defenders in rural Utah only had enough time to spend between 7 and 15 minutes with their clients total, and they would just always tell them to plead guilty. So we're trying to change that.
So to kind of put that in perspective, what is the appropriate amount of time for a public defense typically?
Well, I think every case is individual and unique. But if you thought about it, if you had a brother-in-law or a cousin who got arrested maybe for shoplifting, and maybe they're guilty, maybe they admit they're guilty, and so 7 to 15 minutes is enough time to say, I'll work out the best plea for you. But maybe they've been wrongfully charged. Maybe they were maybe a friend or somebody else did it, and they got the finger pointed at them. And so I think every case is unique. I'm not saying that guilty pleas are always inappropriate, but if you have a public defender system that is built on telling everyone plead guilty, even if you're not guilty, then that's a problem. And actually it costs the taxpayers more if we're incarcerating people that aren't guilty or shouldn't be incarcerated.
I'm going to come back to that question later about how it could possibly cost more, because it seems a little counterintuitive. Mm-hmm. So, Commissioner Kamalu, congratulations. I understand that you are the chair of the Indigent Defense Commission, recently elected. Congratulations.
Just recently. Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about what some of the funding challenges of indigent defense has been for counties.
I've been involved in the indigent defense just in 2020, so I don't have the longevity with the topic as much as my counterparts here, but what I know, there are 29 counties in Utah, and there's a tremendous variety in those counties in their budgets and in the various services that the commissions and other people have instituted over time. So what I learned is perhaps helpful for the viewing audience. I learned a lot more about the Sixth Amendment, and I also learned that that there's some really big programs like in Salt Lake County that have been functional, and then there's a great variety in many of the counties in Utah where there's sharing of folks and the coverage is maybe not as good as it needs to be. So so the state is on the hook, as I understand, legally, and yet it's the counties who provide the systems. And so, and you can correct me or clarify.
No, I think that's correct.
These are lay terms because I'm coming in as a layperson to understand and to serve. So, so the attempt is, in recent years, because of Senator Weiler's bill and this new commission, newer over the last several years, to be able to appropriate funding from the state to the various systems, to the county programs, and to try to create some equity.
So, Senator, that's a great point. Explain, if you will, since you've got the institutional knowledge, how has the structure and the financing changed, in your view, to the approach of providing defense counsel to indigent?
Yeah, so over 50 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court basically made it clear that the states do have this constitutional obligation. And for some reason, as the commissioner stated, the state of Utah kind of punted that to the counties. And what I found out in 2015 was Utah was one of only 2 states in the nation that didn't have any state funding, providing help for public defenders. And the other state was Pennsylvania, by the way. And so what we've tried to do is partner with the counties and incentivize them to do the right thing. We also want them to have the proper procedures and the proper contracts and to eliminate any conflicts of interest. But part of my goal was to get the counties to not decrease their spending, but to incentivize them to spend more with grants and with matching funds from the state.
And the counties spend about $36 million on indigent defense a year.
Yes, they do a great job.
But judges do the appointing, and judges can consider a lot of factors, your dependents, other sources of income. 80 to 90% of people who come into the criminal justice system are indigent, so I think there's some argument that you could say appoint first, let people hire attorneys later, because early appointment of counsel helps with those cost savings that Senator Weiler mentioned.
Per year.
Commissioner Kamalu, there are 29 different models, but your county, Davis County, was the first and only with a county-funded public defender coordinator. There were no other counties that had that position prior to us, so Davis County was ahead on that organization. 2 of the bigger counties have public defender offices that are independent, so a little bit different than yours. And then many other counties just have independent contractors with not a lot of accountability to the system, not a lot of data collection or reporting on what they do, just that flat fee contract. And when you have a flat fee contract, you do what Senator Weiler talked about, right? You meet and plead people because you have to control your calendar as an attorney, right? And you go get a private client, that private client will pay you hourly, so why wouldn't you prioritize that person?
Excellent points. Stay with us after the commercial break. We'll find out a little bit more about how these regional differences exist and what the Indigent Defense Commission and the state would like to see for certain equaling out of the platforms and still provide some regional opportunities at a local level. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Thank you. And again, we're joined by our guests today talking about the Indigent Defense Commission and why this important role exists. Now, Joanna, before the break, you'd mentioned that there's differences by region and by contract versus in-house. What say you as to which one's the preferred, or what are your thoughts, pros and cons, all of you?
Well, what I found in drafting this legislation, and I worked on a committee with the courts for a couple of years before we ran the bill in 2016, was that there were several counties that did a pretty good job. Salt Lake County, Davis County, Utah County, to a certain extent Weber County. But the further we got from the Wasatch Front, of course, there's less people, but there's also less funding. And what I was really concerned with, Shawn, is in some of the rural counties, of course, they would put out the public defender contracts to bid, and then usually the lowest bidder would win. Now, I don't know if it was your son or if you were a brother-in-law, if you'd want the cheapest attorney to be, but that's what we were constantly getting. But even further than that, it was a flat fee. And so if your brother-in-law's case needed an expert witness, that would come out of the public defender's pocket. I mean, they've now won the contract. So if you're paying for the expert witness out of your pocket, you can guess that most public defenders were not hiring expert witnesses. The same was true for investigators, and the same was true for appeals. The appeals sometimes take hundreds of hours, and there was no extra compensation. And so that's what we were seeing, is that these public defenders were doing what we incentivized them to do. They were spending, as Joanna was saying, they were spending as little as time possible for each case, because most of them were also, billing $100 an hour or more for private clients. So of course they're going to want to maximize their time with the private clients and minimize their time with the public defense contract.
So some of the more organized counties with public defender offices, you have dedicated public defenders, so they don't have that incentive. Am I going to represent Todd or my indigent clients?
Yeah.
I would clearly represent you. But it keeps the incentive straight, so people can investigate, can do the work they need to do on cases, and can actually push back against the system and keep it in good health.
And another conflict of interest that we've been trying to avoid, that I found was fairly rampant in some areas, was that the county attorney, who is the chief prosecutor and is elected, he would often advise the county commissioners as to who to hire for the public defenders and who not to hire. And we heard stories about, hey, don't award this attorney. He's trying too many of these cases. He's making us work too hard. So let's blackball them and hire somebody else. And that's the last thing we want for a fair playing field, is have the prosecutor picking who the defense attorney is going to be. And so if a county partners with us, we require them to eliminate all of those conflicts of interest and to use standardized contracts. And Joanna has been really exceptional in helping us kind of avoid those conflicts of interest moving forward.
And in county commissioner's defense, you only had one attorney in the county to talk to in smaller counties. So you turned to your county attorney because you are not a lawyer. Spencer Cox was one of the few county commissioners who was a lawyer, but even he wasn't a criminal defense attorney, right? So you don't have any other advice. So it's Not that you intended to make a bad choice, but you had no one else to look to. So I think it is a really huge improvement to have, as Davis County does, an independent public defender. Iron County has that now. A lot of the counties in the 4th Judicial District, so around Utah County, Millard, Juab, San Pete. Hopefully Wasatch is coming on board. The 8th District, which is Uinta and Daggett. So yeah, we're working to bring counties together and to get that independent voice, which I think helps you as county commissioners, but also helps clients, helps prosecutors, helps judges, helps it all function better.
And Commissioner Kamalu, you know, us being county commissioners, I would say there's a lot of validity to what Todd and Joanna just mentioned. When I first came into office, you know, we have 3 full-time county commissioners. We act as day-to-day administrators, but neither one of us had a law degree. Still, in the current mix, none of us have a law degree. And so it is common for us to want to turn to our legal experts, you know, the county attorney being chief among them, and to say, hey, what kind of counsel could you give? Now, I'm pleased to say that we didn't have any situations like Senator Weiler had mentioned where there was kind of an overt conflict there, but certainly during budget hearings, which are an important part of our job, it might be advantageous for a prosecution side to say, hey, here's what the budget ought to be. I mean, what's been your experience?
Well, we came into office, 2 of the 3 of us commissioners in Davis County, less than 2 years ago. And you know, there's 7 other elected officials, the Davis County attorney being one of those. But I didn't even automatically know about another attorney who works very closely with Troy Rawlings, who is our managing public defender. I didn't even know about that right upon coming into office, so it took a little while to even learn, you know, how it all works. So I agree, when there's elected officials who go in and out of office, it's important to have some stability in the indigent defense. And I'm grateful that in our county we inherited that already in place. But I would say that the very best thing for budgets is the stability of a budget. And so it's very helpful when the state is partnering now, and hopefully when it's not a pandemic, there will be steadiness in the amount of the money that the state can give to bring all the different systems up to an equitable level.
Excellent, thank you. I totally agree. So stay with us. We've got another break. We'll be back to find out what the future of indigent defense in Utah looks like. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Thanks for joining the county seat. Again, today we're talking about the Indigent Defense Commission and why it's an important consideration for our state like all the others. So tell us about some of the more recent developments to the Indigent Defense Commission, and after the last couple of segments, how we're improving and normalizing how counties and cities regard Indigent Defense
Commission.
It's a tongue twister, yeah.
It is. Public defense.
Yes.
I think the most significant recent development was Senator Okerlund and Representative Ferry's bill last year, creating a state-funded appellate office for counties of the 3rd through 6th class. So that's the 24 counties that are the smallest, most rural, and appellate is an extremely specialized area of law. I'm a former appellate attorney. We're total nerds. And as you said, the appeals can take tons of hours.
What is appellate?
So, thank you. You have the right to an attorney if you are going to trial, and you have the right to an attorney if you want to appeal to one of our 2 appellate courts, the Court of Appeals or the Utah State Supreme Court.
So if someone's been convicted,
right,
and they say, no, I've been wrongfully convicted, then they would file an appeal. But it's a different skill set because appeals are almost exclusively done on paper, whereas trials are done with witnesses and testimony in the courtroom.
So the state is now providing that for smaller counties, and I think it's a significant help, and we hope the legislature continues to support that. It was great to get that bill passed. So I think that's huge, and I think the future, child welfare is a really interesting area because county commissioners pay for child welfare, for defense for parents who are potentially having their kids taken away, but the state pays for the rest of the whole system, pays for DCFS, pays for guardian ad litem, pays for the AGs. You are on the hook for this one provision of defense services for parents, and your county attorneys aren't even in the courtroom. So I think that may be something to work on in the future.
Another development, Shawn, is regionalization. So we had 2 criminal convictions in Juab County overturned by the appellate courts in the state because there was ineffective assistance of counsel. So we were able, Joanna especially, we were able to bring Juab and Utah County together, and we're now paying Utah County extra money to provide public defenders in Juab County. Utah County is a well-established county with a well-established office, and Juab County was really struggling on their own. And there is some synergy of having that bigger office cover a second county.
Do you mind if we touch on real briefly, back to one of our earlier segments, this idea that if you're not effective at the trial level, it can actually be more expensive for the system? How is that the case?
Well, I can tell you at the state prison level, it costs over $30,000 a year to house an inmate. So if we're convicting people and putting them in jail who don't belong there, then that is absolutely an extra cost to the taxpayers. Again, if someone is innocent but they don't have effective counsel, they're more likely to be convicted and serve jail time. And of course, a lot of these people will serve in county jails, especially if they're misdemeanor defenses, but that's still a cost to the taxpayer. You have to feed them, you have to babysit them, etc.
You also have people out of jobs, not paying taxes. You have people not in their families. There's lots of collateral costs, I think, as well.
They're not paying child support either or contributing to the economy. So, yeah.
Very good things to think about that I think sometimes in our conversations with neighbors and family, we oftentimes forget and skip over. So what is the future of this program for the state of Utah and, in your eyes, the counties?
Well, I mean, I think the future is yet to be seen. That we've seen the legislature over the last 4 years really step up and make a significant contribution. We're hoping that that'll continue once the economy recovers. While we're making progress, I don't think we've reached that equilibrium or nirvana yet. I think we need more state funding to help match with the counties and get there. And we've had some outside pressure with some lawsuits from the ACLU and some other things, which fortunately we've been able to stave off to this point. But I do think you'll see more regionalization and more specialized services like appeals being taken over on a state level.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for joining the county seat. We hope that you've enjoyed today's program and learned a lot from it. If you have, please share with your friends on social media. And remember that the government closest to you is always the most effective. You've been watching the county seat. Thanks.